Welcome to our very first Housing Community Summit podcast special. Well, it's technically the fifth. Those of you who've tuned into more than one already, some of you may be tuning in for the first time, of course. This is the first year at the Housing Community Summit that we've done the podcast. The reason we have is we thought it'd be really good to dive into the topics in a bit more detail post the panels and presentations with sector thought leaders and influencers who we're sure will have a view on some of the topics coming up. I'm flying solo today as my fellow co-host Alison Inman is tied up, so no pressure. But I have got her words ringing in my ears. Make sure it's all polish, not all polish and no grit. I'm Amanda Leonard, founder and CEO of Perfect Storm, and Alison and I have formed the Grit and Polish podcast series that we're rolling out today at the conference and yesterday. I've had a little help today from our fantastic sponsors. First up with me is Suresh, who's co-hosting today. So welcome, Suresh.
Thank you.
Suresh is managing partner for housing for Boyden, executive search. And we're also sponsored by Housemark, who are the UK's leading data and insight company, and 3C, who are an award-winning tech, data and digital consultancy, and they will be joining me later in the final podcast of the series. I'm also joined now by Paul Fiddaman, who's the CEO of Karbon Homes. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Hi.
I know Paul. We worked together on the inception of Karbon Homes way back when.
That's
so
absolutely
do you remember,
right,
Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember. Very fondly. Remember. Absolutely.
Was I a pain? Yeah.
No, you were brilliant.
Yeah, and I have to say, Paul used to take me to the most fantastic Italian restaurant in Gosforth, and there was many a last train down south nearly missed during the merger as we were having conversations putting the world to rights.
That's because the crack was good, Amanda, wasn't it?
The crack was great.
Absolutely.
It was great. I feel like I maybe only eat Italian, Suresh, because I had Italian with you last night, didn't I? I promise I do eat other cuisines. Yeah.
Other cuisines are available.
Yeah, other cuisines are indeed available, but you've both got exceptional taste in Italian restaurants, I can say that. Just a little bit about Paul. I know a lot of you might know Paul, as he's well known in the sector. Paul is an accountant by trade, but we won't hold that against him. Started life with PwC and then joined Sunderland Football Club, which is still a real passion of his.
Sadly, yeah.
Yes, and has been over the years. Before he moved into various housing roles as both CFO and CEO in the North East. And since Karbon Homes inception, Paul, you've been really spearheading growth there. Now, today, we're going to talk to you about funding and growth because you're doing some really interesting stuff at Karbon. Let's, before we kind of get into some of the challenges that we're seeing in the economic landscape and the funding arena that's really constraining growth, tell us about your strategy and vision for growth at Karbon, because you're doing some really cool things.
Yeah, so, I mean, people perhaps will find this slightly ironic, but we don't, as an organisation, set out to go and find potential partners. Our view is that being good at what we do is our best sort of advertising strategy, if you like. And we've got a track record now of being a safe haven for organisations who are perhaps finding it a bit tough and finding some of the challenges in the housing sector at the moment just a little bit daunting, and want a partner who can help to preserve their legacy and help them to make sure that their customers, above all else, are treated well and given the sort of investment that they need. So on the back of that, yeah, we've had a series of really successful partnership initiatives where organisations have come and joined us and been integrated into the group in various ways. We are flexible in the way we approach that, and we always go into it with a view that we respect the legacy and the kind of history and the abilities and the capabilities that come with other organisations, whatever their scale. And I think if you go into it with the humility that you believe you can learn something from everybody, I think that's a really good starting point for a relationship. So yeah.
And that sort of founding philosophy to growth must sometimes present some economic challenges as you bring organisations in. Does it, making the business case work? Because that that's the harsh reality of growth as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And each time we've been approached by an organisation, it's been a different motivation for them. So generally speaking, I think it's sort of characterised by organisations that would love to do more but haven't got the resource. So they come to us because we are well resourced and we have to make that transaction work. So the idea is to find the easy areas of efficiency, and sometimes that's just about being able to absorb additional customers and additional homes without adding to our infrastructure, making the whole thing more efficient overall.
So you're seeing that. And Suresh, I mean, you've worked with loads of organisations that have been through merger, going through merger. What are your thoughts kind of hearing Paul talk about that type of model?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the questions I was about to ask was, are you being approached more often now? We've started to see an acceleration of mergers and conversations around merger. I'm certainly seeing the trend in smaller organisations being much more open to it, but trying to find the right cultural fit or partner, like you say, you use that word partner. Is that something that you're starting to see more conversations coming your way?
Yeah, I think the last 4 or 5 years in the sector have been historically challenging and probably more daunting than anything I've experienced in more years in the sector than I'd care to admit to publicly, really. So a combination of rent being sort of constrained, costs going up by more than inflation, additional demands being placed on the sector from a whole range of different sources, regulatory and sort of statutory. You put all of that together and you end up with organisations whose capacity has been eroded significantly over the last 5 or 6 years. And it can't be a surprise then that organisations who really care about their customers want to find ways to deliver for their customers without necessarily having to pull up the drawbridge and not be able to do things because they haven't got the capacity to do it.
And do you talk about your central infrastructure that's scalable and obviously delivers those economies of scale, which helps with the viability. Are you still doing local delivery in those local areas where you're growing?
One of the things we've wrestled with as an organisation is we go back to organisations that were founded in the 70s, which were very community focused, and I keep saying this, and I apologies if this sounds a bit corny, but one of those organisations, Enterprise 5 Housing Association, was founded in the sort of mid-late 70s, and the inaugural board meeting, and I've still got the minutes in my office because I occasionally read this as inspiration, somebody uttered the immortal words, "We are about people and their housing," in that order. And I think that's a brilliant philosophy, and it's something that I, as a leader, believe we try to preserve as an organisation. So we've wrestled with this kind of idea that we want to be very local and connected to the communities that we serve, but we see advantage in scale, and we see advantage in being able to generate the resources to invest. So the way we've tried to resolve that tension is we restructured a couple of years ago. So we've organised ourselves around 8 geographical areas, and that's meant that we've been able to deliver smaller patch sizes and more local connection, able to work with stakeholder organisations, able to work with community groups at that level, that very grassroots level. And I think in that way we've been able to preserve some of that community focus that I think is really important.
Yeah, and it's easy to lose sight of that, isn't it? And I know you've also had quite an ambitious sort of tech and digital agenda, haven't you? You've got, a really experienced kind of tech, data, digital team. Has that helped you as well with some of those central efficiencies?
Yeah, we've begun working on a programme. This would be dear to your heart, actually, Amanda. We're calling Good to Great, or as one wag put it, Good to Slightly Better recently. And the thrust of that is to make sure that we're making the best use of technology, and for the people who are comfortable engaging with us in that way digitally, to provide a really slick, seamless, reliable, trustworthy route to access our services, in the belief that that'll leave us with capacity to deal with the more complex needs of people who perhaps prefer not to, for various reasons, engage with us in that way.
Yeah.
So we're in the early stages of that programme, but the first thing we did was a sort of discovery phase. Now, the background is we have consistently had upper quartile levels of customer satisfaction since we were formed. We're not complacent. We always want to do that better.
But that in itself for a merged organisation is pretty good going, isn't it?
Yeah, and
yeah, I know you're very humble about it.
Yeah,
but
yeah. One of the things the board were adamant about when we created Karbon in the first place, and because you were there, was we mustn't lose sight of the knitting. We must be able to keep doing the day job well, whilst we cope with the complexity of integrating different organisations in different ways. So one of the things that we learned about ourselves through that discovery phase was that customer satisfaction in some degree is based on really committed, motivated staff going above and beyond on a daily basis. And perhaps the systems underpinning that haven't had the sort of investment that we should have been delivering over the last 3 or 4 years. So part of what we imagine will come out of Good to Great is a really kind of serious upgrade of our capability in that space to make sure that the offer, the customer journey, is a really smooth, frictionless one and is easy for people to enjoy.
And it's interesting to hear that that's a very customer-led design, not just about the tech, because I'm seeing all too often that we're putting customers into buckets of personas or general needs, and actually it's about knowing your customers' needs and preferences.
Yeah,
isn't it?
absolutely. And I think the regulatory framework and the ombudsman in particular are nothing if they're not inviting us to understand customer in very granular detail.
Totally.
So you need that data, don't you? And you need that understanding. But it's all wasted effort if you don't do anything with that. If you don't translate that into action.
Yeah.
And think about how you can use that intel to drive a better, improved experience for your customers. What's the point of it, really? So,
and we've got that next, actually, with Housemarque and 3C talking about how to turn data into those actionable insights. Suresh, one of the things that Paul's kind of talking about really is also culture, how that culture of embedding, the original philosophy, community-based delivery, customer-centric technology change. Are you seeing a shift in the assignments you're doing in terms of the types of skills and people and cultures people are trying to drive?
I think that shift has been happening for a while, if I'm honest. It's been slow, but it has been happening for a while. Just to go back on something there that Paul said, which I thought was really interesting, one of the few chief executives that I've heard say this, when you were looking at the discovery phase about turning things to a digital process, there was a space in there for those that didn't want to use that scenario. And I always go back to where I grew up. I grew up in social housing. My mum doesn't speak English as a first language. It would be pretty damn hard for her to go down a digital route. So if you're fully committed to that option, you are, by nature, you're going to take out some of the customer interaction that you could have had. And that then feeds back into the data loop, the intelligence, for you to then go off and deliver better services. So that's really interesting. I thought that was remarkable remarkable is the wrong word, but certainly an insight into how people are thinking about customer service.
And you're right. You tell me stories about your mum. She's legendary, isn't she? She normally boxes Suresh's ears, actually.
I'm the youngest of 4 lads, and my dad was in the army, so it was a very strict household. Yeah. And I've got a 2-year-old now, and I have no idea how she had 4. Yeah. It's insane, absolutely insane.
But your mum, to Paul's point, would she would have needed a different service experience.
Absolutely, a different kind of communication style.
Yeah.
So to come back to what we were saying in terms of those shifts and dynamics around what we're looking for, that is driven by the organisation. Where are you on your journey to customer-centric approach? Some organisations, unfortunately, where they have stock which are still in difficult conditions and are spending much more of their time and energy and focus and resource on the repair side, perhaps aren't as far forward on that side of the issue.
Yeah.
Now, you can argue it all needs to happen at the same time. So what becomes top priority? Is it the data? Is it the actual doing? The practical aspects of interacting with the customer, the community? It's very tricky, which makes Paul's job incredibly hard. As senior leaders, you mentioned it earlier, senior leaders in this current market space, I've not, in the 20 years that I've worked with teams and worked alongside teams, seen an environment this difficult. Financially,
No.
operationally, politically, you are being squeezed every which way.
And you said that, Paul, didn't you? And I think it's starting to affect. There's a couple of leadership forums that I chair, actually. One for Housemarque and one for a company called Greenacre. And we did a poll of next level aspiring execs. And you know what? They were saying we don't want to be CEOs. Because it's too hard. It's in the too difficult box. You know, it's just a really tough job. I mean, do you get that, Paul? Are you hearing that?
I do hear a little bit of that. What I think is the antidote to that is to operate a very simple philosophy where you surround yourself with the best talent that you possibly can, because that's the way you make your life a little bit easier. And that, you know, there are some other things that you can wrap around that. So in my case, I think it's good to have some external sounding board. So I have a little self-selected peer group of chief exec colleagues from different parts of the country, and we meet every month or 6 weeks, and we just swap notes of what's going on.
Real honesty, gritty challenges.
Absolutely, and they're people I would absolutely trust with my deepest, darkest secrets, which is critical. Otherwise, people aren't going to be honest with what's going on. So I think you need an outlet, but you need a good team around you, and you need honesty between that team and yourself, and between the team and the board as well. Because I think much is made of governance in the sector. If there isn't openness and honesty between an executive team and a board, the board don't know what's really going on in an organisation. It's very difficult for a non-exec to triangulate that. So that relationship is, for me, the kind of foundation stone for what goes after.
And that's a dynamic that we've seen with heightened regulation. I think I do a lot of work with boards and exec teams, as you know, and you know, one of the things I'm observing is, you know, where that dynamic doesn't quite work, boards are diving down into the detail, execs are being defensive, and you're in this cycle of you know, boards aren't feeling assured, and that's not healthy, is it?
And I often sit in boardrooms, not just my own. In fact, probably less so my own. But I sit in boardrooms and I hear the question, how can the board be assured that ... complete with your favourite pet subject, you know? The challenge there is that assurance is built up from such a range of sources in an organisation that it's really difficult for a team to kind of point to the thing that says, well, it's that is your assurance, because it won't be that, it'll be that and that and that and that.
And a degree of triangulation of all of those things.
And what the board are usually really asking is, how can I be reassured? And it's different.
It is.
It's not the same thing at all.
And boards need to have the skills to read those diverse sources, don't they?
Absolutely. And it, you know, you can help by trying to codify some of that and saying, you know, this is our assurance framework, and these are the things that will contribute to this view of the organisation that you're actually looking at, and you can be confident because it's been vetted by independent sources, it's been internally audited, it's been externally audited, whatever, and that's how cumulatively you can be confident that the thing you're looking at is the right thing. But on top of that, it's really important that it's an honest thing as well. So the board needs its executive team to be going, here's the stuff we're not good at, and because that's the stuff you need to do something about most urgently, isn't it?
and have that honesty. We're going to shift into sort of funding now, and you're obviously, you're scaling, Paul, you're investing in technology, you are an ex-accountant by trade. How would you describe the current funding landscape for social housing in England? I mean, I know that's a big question.
Yeah, access to funding isn't and has never been the problem. There's always been plenty of people willing to invest in the sector for all of the well-rehearsed reasons that we understand. So it's a stable, well-regulated sector. You've never seen a funder lose money from investing in the sector, ever. And there's a soft landing for organisations that get themselves into financial difficulties. So it's a good, stable investment proposition, isn't it? What has changed is the combination of kind of financial factors we were talking about earlier around rent and cost inflation and all the rest of it has weakened the sector's ability to service debt. So pre-spending review, we were looking at our business plan. We built 700 new homes last year. In 3 years' time, if we hadn't done anything about it, we would probably have been contemplating a development programme troughing out at about 200 homes a year. That's the scale of lost capacity to us as an organisation. And my understanding from talking to colleagues is that that's replicated quite widely across the
and
sector.
Worse in some cases as well, of course.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So, you look at the sector's global accounts and you see that interest cover is dropping below 100%. So the sector isn't generating enough income to pay its interest.
Yeah.
That's not a sector that's in a great shape in many, many ways. So we have been exploring to plug that gap, the creation of a for-profit vehicle within the group.
Yeah. And
we think that's a way of potentially getting different types of investment into the group to support our development activity. And we think that's got real interest. One of the challenges behind that is generating enough of a return from a social housing product to satisfy the return requirements of potential investors. It's not a slam dunk.
No.
So if you're building social rented homes in the northeast in particular, you will find that the rates of return are well below what even a benign pension fund might be looking for. So that invites you to start thinking creatively about how you might plug the gap. Now, the obvious route would be grant, wouldn't it? So,
yeah, it would.
Pay us 50% grant, jobs are good and no problem. Government then doesn't get anywhere near the number of homes that it's aspiring to deliver, so there's a problem there. And we've got a financial settlement which is as good as anyone could have hoped for in the economic circumstances of the day. Is it enough? Probably not.
No.
Time will tell. But the former Deputy Prime Minister and her team have really pushed hard to get a settlement which is as generous as we could have hoped for as a sector. But the interesting bit, so let's assume that they won't go all the way with grant. I think it will be difficult for them to do that. Some of the other funding announcements recently give us cause to kind of be reasonably cautiously optimistic about how you might make some of that stack up. So, the new housing bank and its ability to potentially deliver debt at low or zero interest rates, potentially to invest in equity form as well into a proposition. You put all of that together as a basket of measures and you've maybe got something which can generate the sort of returns. So I am travelling reasonably optimistically that we can find a way through this and still continue to up our game and development and meet some of the government's targets.
And then that's really interesting because what you're describing is how complex, how multifaceted it needs to be to make the economic stat. Because you're right, there's no point in making asks against an economic backdrop and the headwinds we're facing, because it's not going to land, is it? Like you said, we've got to get really creative, because there's got to be a way to do that. I mean, it sounds really interesting. I mean, how's that thinking changing your business plan then over the next few years? Or is it still really embryonic?
So it's not there yet. We're in the process of seeking registration for the vehicle. We are hopeful that it could be ready to transact probably early next calendar year, depending on how long it takes to get through registration, which can be a variable proposition, I think. In business planning terms, what it means is we would be able to avoid that tailing off of our development programme capacity and route it through this vehicle, and in the words of others in the sector, spend other people's money to deliver some of that. And that, I think, will be a way of hedging against that falling off in capacity.
Yeah. Yeah, and are you seeing more of that, Suresh, from your clients? Are you seeing more of the for-profit activity?
There's a lot of for-profit activity.
Yeah.
And I think there are some that are waiting in the wings. I think, Paul, you mentioned there that the time frame that it takes to get registered, and I think for some, that time frame is starting to eke out a little bit. So we have some that are waiting, but it's happening, and there is, a tidal wave of them coming through. I think we'll see them start to come through soon. And then there are obviously those that have been in the market for quite some time now with the likes of Sage and others. So one thing that starts to kind of bring me back to the conversation we were having earlier about skill sets is, with the complexity of where we are now, the one that you've discussed on a funding perspective, but from a skills base, what do you think we're going to need then as board members, as senior leaders in the sector? What do you think is going to be needed to take those
different type of mix of organisation? Yeah,
I think that's right. So the vehicle that we're registering, which is going to be called Graphite Living,
I like that. You're always good with a catchy title, aren't you?
It's Karbon, but it's different. Right?
Yeah.
See what we did?
We haven't got time to talk about the origins of Karbon, but it's cool. It's to do with North East heritage, etc.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, love it.
So we have been out and recruited some independent board members, and we were specifically targeting the skill set, Suresh, that you're describing there. So people who understand that world and can help that organisation to really demonstrate its capability and capacity in that world, and they'll be invaluable as well when we come to negotiating with potential investors to make sure that the deal is right for everybody. And we recruited to the parent board as well at the same time. So we've got an individual come through who is a chartered accountant, which is always good to see. You can't have too many accountants, can you? But from a background of securing major infrastructure funding. So her interest in that transaction is how we make sure that Karbon as a parent is protected as we enter into those discussions. So Graphite needs its own board, and it needs to make good decisions. Karbon needs to understand those decisions and make sure that they're in the best interest of Karbon as well. So we've deliberately targeted people who can help us to plug that gap.
That sounds really interesting. I mean, I think just we're so if we can hear any background noise, we've got really animated people coming out of main sessions. But I just want to touch on last couple of areas, really, Paul. Regeneration. What's your approach to regen? In areas that could be considered to be left behind. Where are you at with that?
Yeah, I think that's still a critical part of the landscape for the housing markets in which we operate, and it is undeniable that there are assets that we have which are beyond their useful life and are not what people aspire to, and in a well-ordered world you would be able to replace them with new, modern, energy efficient homes that people would really love to live in. Funding that is a challenge, as you know. We keep lobbying to try and remind Homes England and the department that regeneration is an important part of our armoury as an organisation. One of the things that I ponder myself is you've obviously got funding for warm homes, and we sometimes have homes that the cost of bringing up to a reasonable energy efficient standard outweighs the value of that home in use.
Yeah.
So you'd spend...
Particularly in areas like the northeast where you've got the different price point.
So you would potentially be spending more to achieve an energy performance than the thing is worth in the first place. And that feels daft, doesn't it?
It's definitely counterintuitive, isn't it?
Absolutely. So what if warm homes funding could be used for demolition and replacement purposes?
Which would still achieve the warm homes objective.
You're going to get a more modern, more energy efficient housing estate for the nation.
Yeah. And is that something you've had conversations on? I mean,
well, I think there are those in the DESNES team who would kind of see that as a legitimate use of that resource. I think it's still problematic from a Treasury perspective, where the paradigm is about net additionality, and that I think can still get in the way of a well thought through regeneration proposal. And critically, it's all about engagement with the local community and making sure that they're on the journey with you, and what you're proposing and what the vision that you create together is a compelling vision for what the future of an area could be, instead of being constrained by what it is and its reputation and its appearance and look and feel right now.
But I think that whole place-making approach to regen is, we're not going to make the economics stack if we just look at warm homes in a binary way, are we, and regen in a binary way. I'm working on a couple of regens at the moment, and it's challenging, isn't it? It's challenging to kind of get something that's fantastic and right and meets the needs of that wider place-based strategy and make the numbers add up.
Yeah, absolutely. But you could absolutely transform a place just by taking the right investment decisions as part of that, and absolutely bring the local community along on that journey with you and key stakeholders. And what's not to like? The result is a really nice place to settle down and call home.
And all of the well-proven interdependent economic benefits, of course, of having great places, that wider and employment, etc. We've just got time for one more, and I'm going to ask you probably the same question, Suresh, actually. I'll leave the last word to Paul, so I'll ask Suresh first, which means that gives Paul time to think of his answer. What gives you optimism, Suresh, about the future of social housing in England? And I'm going to twist the question slightly for you, Paul, and talk about funding. Give you a clue. In England.
Gives me optimism. There's a few things that have, and again, they've been there for a little while now, is the onset of the people that are coming in to lead, to work with us, whether that's board, whether that's at senior levels. Everybody has the same goal, is that they want this to work, that they want to deliver the best possible properties that are safe, that are warm, that are kept in good condition, that are delivering the best levels of customer service as they can. The optimism is that, yes, it's a very, very difficult time and complex time right now, but they are there for the long term. And I don't think anybody who's coming in is unaware of the challenges that we face now. So it's about, how do we support them?
Yeah.
And how do we get them ready to arrive? If they're coming in from different industries, different sectors, what are we doing to support their ability to understand us before they get into the role, so that they can hit the ground running? That's something that I'm working hard to do, is work behind the scenes to get people to understand it first, whether that's networking with the likes of Paul and others to say, this is what we're doing and this is how complex we are. These are large, complex organizations with thousands of people working inside them. So this isn't going to be an easy thing for you to come and do. That it's not a safe place for you to just come and retire. That's not what we're looking for.
But it's an exciting place to be, isn't it? I mean, we're certainly seeing, I think, a unifying in a way I haven't seen in my time. I spent my substantive career out of sector, but actually I have now been in the sector 15 years. It seems like yesterday when I first joined and knew nothing about the sector. But I think I'm seeing a unifying of kind of sentiment and messaging and passion and agenda. We're at a unified conference indeed with the CIH and NHF together. So Paul, what gives you optimism about the future of funding and development in England? If indeed you are optimistic, I'm sure you are, but...
Probably similar to Suresh, it's optimism about the sector more broadly that I carry, I think. So you know a little bit about my backstory. I sort of blundered into the sector via a slightly tortuous route as a history graduate. And I joined the board of a housing association without really knowing what they did. And it was only when I started to realise there was a way of using your skills to do something that felt worthwhile that I thought, you know what, I think I could see me working full-time in this sector, and that's what happened. The reason I'm still in the sector 30 years later is because I just love being surrounded by passionate, committed, enthusiastic, determined people who share the same value set, who are really committed to doing the best job that they possibly can for the customers we serve. So that is the source of my optimism in kind of very simplistic terms. In terms of funding, I believe that there is a continued supply of enough funding, probably more than enough in certain respects, to deliver all that the sector needs to deliver, provided the sector can meet the kind of the cost of that, to put it simply and bluntly. In other words, being able as a sector to generate the sort of returns that will enable us to pay our interest bills or enable us to service a return to an investor, because I see little difference between those two things. So I think it exists. I think there's innovation and determination to find a way to use that supply of funding, and I think you are seeing a breed of intelligent investor who understands the sector and is connected to the values of the sector, and therefore is determined to support the sector to achieve its ambitions as well. So lots of reasons to be optimistic, I think, Amanda.
Brilliant. So, and on that optimistic note, that's all we've got time for. So thank you, Paul. Thank you, Suresh.
Thank you.
And see you soon.